Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Q News, bringing you the latest regional and international developments. Here are the top stories making the headlines this hour. Egypt's State Information Service has denied reports from some Israeli media claiming coordination to open the Rafah crossing in the coming days for the Gaza residents to exit the territory. A senior Egyptian official confirmed that any opening of the crossing would follow US President Donald Trump's plan and would allow two-way passage for both entering and leaving Gaza. Earlier, Israel's Channel 13 claimed that the crossing would open to allow some Gaza residents to travel to Egypt, coordinated with Cairo, approved by Israeli security, and supervised by a European Union delegation, similar to the mechanism used in January. Gulf leaders have convened in Bahrain for the 46th session of the GCC Supreme Council, chaired by King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, with Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni attending as a guest of honor. The summit brings together senior GCC leaders and representatives, including the UAE Vice President Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed, Oman's Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, Kuwait's Emir Sheikh Mash'al Al Ahmad, Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman, and Qatar's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman, representing Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad. Bahrain's King Hamad is chairing the meeting, which is expected to review regional priorities and strengthen coordination across Gulf states. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is taking part as the guest of honor. The GCC Secretary General says Gulf states' position on Palestine remains firm, calling for an end to occupation and a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital. Speaking at the opening of the GCC 46th Supreme Council session in Bahrain, Jassim al-Boudawi stressed the centrality of the Palestinian cause. He urged adherence to a ceasefire in Gaza and welcomed Saudi Arabia's efforts to advancing international initiatives for a two-state solution, also citing the outcomes of the Sharm el-Sheikh summit. Al-Boudawi added that the security of the GCC states is indivisible, warning that regional stability is threatened by attacks he cited, including Iranian missile strikes and Israeli aggression targeting Qatar. The UN General Assembly has adopted an Egypt-submitted resolution declaring Israel's occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights illegal and calling for a full withdrawal. The resolution passed with 123 votes in favor, 7 against, and 41 abstentions. It describes Israel's occupation of the Golan Heights as illegal and urges a full withdrawal. Israel's UN ambassador, Danny Danon, criticized the United Nations as disconnected from reality. Israel captured the Golan Heights in 1967 war and later annexed it, a step recognized by the United States but rejected by most of the international community. More than 30 Israeli settlements have been built in the area, housing over 25,000 Israelis, and Israel has also moved into the UN buffer zone after instability in Syria. Lebanon's Prime Minister Nawaf Salam says Beirut is willing to engage in talks with Israel beyond security issues, but stressed these are not peace negotiations and do not amount to normalization. Salam said any normalization would be tied to a formal peace process, rejecting claims that Lebanon is moving toward a separate track. He defended naming former Ambassador Simon Karam to a US-led ceasefire monitoring team, saying the decision is politically sound and backed nationally. Salam also accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of exaggerating Lebanon's intentions. The appointment of a civilian rather than a military official is being viewed as a measured step amid US pressure for broader direct engagement. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has skipped NATO foreign ministers' talks in Brussels, with Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau representing Washington instead. NATO foreign ministers met in Brussels for talks on the war in Ukraine and wider defense issues, but the meeting drew attention because Rubio did not attend. Washington was represented by Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau, an unusual step for a key transatlantic forum. NATO typically holds two formal foreign ministers meeting each year, and in 2017, a session was rescheduled after then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson initially intended to miss it. That brings us to the end of our top stories for the hour. Stay with us for continuing coverage, analysis, and breaking updates from across the region and around the world here on Q News.